Welcome to DejaVue.
It's your favorite Vue podcast. And as usual, I'm here with my lovely host, Michael Thiessen. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. And how about you?
Fine, can't complain. And we've seen some very interesting things in the last couple of days. A shadow drop, one could almost say, of a new major version of Vite. And that's what we want to talk about today in this little episode.
Yeah, major version. It's been, I think, 5 years now since the very first version of Vite by Evan, and lots of this happened. And 7 major versions in 5 years. It's pretty good.
It's huge. Yeah. I'm really curious about the next one that's coming up, Vite 8, but we might also get into that a bit later. Still, this one looking good. I'm really curious to see how migrations will go. I mean, with the last major version, Vite 6, there was actually, that was maybe a bit weird one. We can talk about that briefly before we get into 7, because there was no actual, major change. There was no break and change really there, but still it was a major version. So that was a bit surprising, but because Vite introduced the environment API, they basically marked us like, hey, this is a big thing. So contrary to semantic versioning, this was indeed something special, so to say.
Right. Even though it's still experimental, it's still it's kind of funny to introduce an experimental thing as a big thing, but it is a huge thing, I think. It kind of changes how we use Vite in the whole way we use it. So.
Yeah. And interestingly, we see more and more frameworks adopting that. Daniel Rowe, who was in guest a couple episodes before, talking about Nuxt 4 and 5, also working on using the environment API to use that in Nuxt.js itself. And other frameworks I also know they adopt that. People over from Tanstack are looking into that, and so on and so on. So it's really nice to see how this is, let's say, shaping the framework and then also the development world.
Yeah. So why don't we just get started with some of the things that have come with Vite 7? And the first thing is node version.
Exactly. So Vite V7 breaking changes, as we know, through semantic versioning. It's what majors are there for. And the Node.js support of Node 18 has been dropped. So only Node 20, I think 20.19 and Node 22.12 or so, you can read it up in the changes as well. They're now required. Why the whole thing? Well, Node.js 18 went end of life, I think in May, so quite recently. And that's a good chance to, actually drop that Node version from being supported because it's end of life, no security fixes, no bug fixes. And it's time to move on, so to say. On the other hand, a lot of people are critical in terms of, why do we need a new major version release? Why do we all need to upgrade? The typical problem in with using dependencies, no matter what, that you have to keep your apps up to date. The good thing, I think, in this case, as long as you don't rely on Node 18 or lower, which ideally the platform where you're deploying to, or if you use Docker images, you upgrade that, you can really do it and should do because, no security fix is an actual problem. So it shouldn't be too hard in this case. And it's a good thing to move forward.
Yeah. And it looks like my understanding here is that the Node version is also allows Vite to be ESM only.
Exactly. That's a perfect segue over to that topic. So before Vite was published as CommonJS and as ESM, maybe before we dive into what it means to be ESM only, maybe we should talk about what CJS and ESM are in the broader context of web development. Because I remember when I heard of that first time, and also back then with there was UMD and System.js and so on. This is all a bit confusing. It feels like I need some kind of degree in module formats. So maybe we dive into that first and then talk about why Vite is ESM only now and what the benefit of that is.
Yeah, this is a topic that I feel like I only vaguely understand, and somehow I've muddled my way through life without really digging into the differences between these two. But Node has on the back end with Node, for the longest time, you've had to do, this require syntax, which is the CommonJS syntax. And the front end has a totally different syntax with the imports and everything like that. And that's the ESM, the ECMAScript modules. I think that's what it stands for.
Correct, yes.
Confusing, that ECMAScript. So anyways, I won't go into that.
Standards.
Standards and acronyms and fun names for things. And so basically there's been this progression over a very long time now where things have been slowly migrating from this CommonJS format to being more and more ESM supported, so that we can have one module system rather than having these two. So if you've been doing development for a while, you may have had to fight with things being in different versions, or a library only supporting CommonJS or only supporting ESM, and but you want to use it in your project that is using a different module format, and it's like this whole headache. And slowly we're getting to a point where we don't have to deal with that, and things are just under ESM.
Absolutely. I mean, as mentioned before, UMD and also AMD is like universal module definition. I think asynchronous module definition were also a thing, but these are really mainly a thing of the past. Well, CJS is still around, luckily, nowadays. So basically a lot of things were CJS before. Now a lot of things in Node still are, but Node finally supports ESM. And there's one more great thing, because as you said, it is a bit of pain to have both in your project and then make them interoperable, because, okay, you have that import whatever from syntax, and then you have the require syntax. So how you make sure, okay, can I mix and match them? Well, not easily. And then if you also write libraries, that's the other side of the coin. You can publish them as CJS only. You can dual publish them to do both as CJS and ESM. And you can, of course, publish them as ESM only. The latter is the more preferred version nowadays, because luckily, with Node 18 going end of life, there is no reason to carry around a CommonJS library anymore. The reason behind it is the following. There is a new feature that was backported to Node 20, and it came in Node 22. It's called Require ESM. So even if you use CommonJS in your Node application, you never switch. Now you can require ECMAScript modules for just like requiring the name of the dependency. So for a library author perspective, you have really no reason to ship CommonJS anymore, unless you say, oh yeah, I want to support Node 18 and below. But I mean, that's up to you in that case. I know that people saying, I want to support Node like 0. something, but eventually, if you now write a package that should support Node versions that are not end of life, ESM only is the way.
That's a feature that I think I missed, the require ESM, but that's a really nice one. And yeah, I can see why it would be backported, because it simplifies so many things. And now, with Vite, we can just have ESM libraries and use them in everything. And so then that's great.
Exactly. And so
solve
with
a
many
lot of
others.
pain points.
Yes, absolutely. You're not the only one who has missed these features. Like, I've opened issues about that, and people saying, oh yeah, people move to ESM only and that sucks. And then but now there's literally no reason to not do that, not to move to ESM only. Dual publishing is still fine. So having CJS and ESM versions of your package is okay. The only downside is that you basically increase the installation size, not the bundle size, the installation size, by basically doubling it. Only CJS is a problematic thing, because then your library can't be tree shaken, right? So if we are on the front side again, you say, I want to use a CJS only library, then you have to load all the things. There is just little CJS tree shaking possible, but for ECMAScript modules, it's perfect. You can tree shake a lot out of that. So that's why ESM modules are preferred. Plus, of course, if you use some kind of build tool, especially the ones that build on Rolldown now with like TS down or obuild and so on, that can also help by saying, okay, I don't want to load all the things. I just need a single function. So even in Node, it could be faster. There was a great example. I sent a PR to a library called fdir. So it's basically to search through directories, right? To crawl directories and globbing and stuff. And that was about okay, let's publish this ESM as well. We can dual publish whatsoever, up to you, but let's have an ESM version. And there were some speed tests being done, and it is way faster now when you only use a few subsets. So that's a great thing.
So random little tidbit of information here, some trivia. I wanted to know what ECMAScript stands for, because I've never actually looked up what the ECMA is for, because that's not a word. And it stands for European Computer Manufacturers Association.
Yeah, they have a lot of standards, right? That's why I have the ECMAScript standard.
There's a little history for you, I guess.
Exactly. So now you know. And the next next Jeopardy or a programmer's trivia, you will score the 2,000 points.
Yeah, you can impress all of your developer friends with that piece of trivia.
Exactly. So. I recently relearned what GIF, or how people actually pronounce it, GIF, that's the right way, stands for. Michael, do you know that by any chance? I had no idea at first.
Graphics interchange format?
Bingo.
Or graphical?
No, graphics. It's all correct.
Okay, graphics. Yeah. Okay.
I also had like, okay, format, obvious, G, graphic, but the I, no idea. And that's graphics even. Yeah, would have scored valuable points in the last quiz, but for the next one.
I should do one sometime.
Yeah, but yeah, all in all, coming back to dual publishing and after, just making that. It's there as ECMAScript module. The PR is up and it might be merged when you hear this episode. A link to that, of course, in the description, just to see that it's not really difficult to do that. Also for you, if you have a package out there, or if you use a package, definitely make sure to request that. Shouldn't be a big thing. And yeah, Kevin, who's working on TS Down, was saying, oh yeah, if you do a dual format, the import time decreased from 9 to 6 milliseconds to around 10 milliseconds, which sounds like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. But it's like, okay, it's a 2x improvement by doing literally not much. So big win.
And since we're talking about standards, web standards, there's a newer one which was also new to me before reading this announcement blog post, and that's the baseline browser target, which basically defines like all of the features that have been adopted for the last 2.5 years in Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and Safari, so the mainstream browsers. And now Vite uses that by default as its build target.
Correct. So that's another breaking change, so to say. We just raise the browser target once again. So we don't have to like polyfill or transform features that browsers support already. Of course, people using Vite or frameworks built on Vite, they can always override that and say, okay, I want that whatsoever. With baseline, it's very interesting. So you might have seen it if you use a website like Can I Use or like MDN or web.dev as well. There, the new features are like sometimes marked as these like, oh yeah, that's baseline, limited availability or similar. And there are actually 2 steps of baseline. There's one that's called widely available. That's what Vite is defaulting to right now. And there's also one just saying newly available. So it's basically in all the major browsers, which is, well, all Chromium-based browsers, Safari and Firefox. So that's the baseline, so to say. And that means in that point, when all latest versions of browsers implement that, it's called newly available. And as soon as you have them supported for 2.5 years, it's widely available. So there's a tiny differentiation. Of course, it's not the case. It just said limited availability. But next time you look at the feature, that's definitely worth just checking the little badge if it's somewhere, especially if it's limited available and you want to build an application that works and I don't know, everything beyond Chrome or Chromium-based browsers, or in case of temporals, Firefox. So that's always a good chance to look at that.
And if you use a website like Can I Use, then on the feature pages underneath the actual like title, there's like a little box that shows you either green checkmark or green checkmark is widely available, and then I think a blue for newly available, and then it just won't be there if it's not really supported yet.
There is limited availability, which is like this yellow X cross time symbol. It's a bit weird because it's not fully red. Yeah, it's a kind of weird symbol, but it's also visible. But like for, I don't know, built-in things in JavaScript, like, I don't know, string.character add or something like that, it's not there because that was before baseline was defined as a standard. So everything that has no symbol on it is all good. It's in forever and will be fine.
All right. Yeah. Learning something new every day, you know?
Absolutely. And I think it's super helpful once again, because back in time, we're like, okay, can I use this in this feature? And you take a look and then you say, okay, you see the browsers, you see the big matrix of where is what available. You might think, what does it actually say? Of course, you should ideally correlate that with your users, right? If you still support IE6, then baseline probably doesn't mean much to you because you have to do like polyfill and not use all things. But if you say, hey, I'm just building an internal application and we all use the latest Chrome, then you know, okay, baseline is fine. So definitely worth checking out. And if you need all the things, setting your browser target is important there.
Yeah, it's a good signal that you can use this like for the basic cases, and probably for most apps, it's baseline is what you want. And then, you can dig into specific things a bit more if you really need to.
Correct. Coming next, we can talk once again about the environment API. We did it already in the episode with Sebastian, the creator of Nuxt and Nuxt Labs, and also in the one of Patak. But surprise, that API, as we also mentioned earlier in this episode, was added in Vite 6. And there are almost like no changes to it. So in Vite 7, we still have it. It's still marked as kind of experimental, but not really. It's a bit of an interesting state. because it's more like, let's go slow on that. Like people want to hit that right. So
Is it
it's
like,
more like
suspense in Vue?
yeah,
Where it's
kind of.
still experimental.
We're still waiting for stabilizing that as well. Yeah, like the next Vue minor version as well, 3.6. One day we'll get there. But actually, the fun part is in Vite 7, not much is being added to the environment API. There's one new hook called build hab, so you can like the plugins coordinate which environment they build how. And other than that, it's more about really like let it cook slow, let make sure to hit that right to avoid breaking changes later on. So if you out there ever use that API, if you're building a framework by any chance, could be an internal one or something bigger, then definitely give some feedback and chat with the Vite folks because they're all curious for that. We want to like make sure there's like some kind of shared infrastructure for all the frameworks out there, and that's should be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think I'm excited for when this environment API is finally stable or less experimental. I don't know how you'd phrase it, but once Vite 7, no, we're in Vite 7, Vite 8, that's the next one.
Yes.
Vite 8, once that one comes out, then
it's probably stabilizing. Yeah, there's a good chance. But with Vite 8, there are also other things likely coming out, right? Not saying it will be the case, depending when that major version will land, but there is a fair chance that also Vite 8 will eventually contain the changes from Rolldown-Vite, so Rolldown as the default bundler. So that will be also exciting. But we will see when it is. That could be a couple months from now, end of the year, next year, we'll see. More likely towards the end of the year. But yeah, we'll watch it closely. And of course, if you're interested in that, you can try it out already. There's that Rolldown-Vite package that you can use to get all the benefits of that wonderful Rust-based bundler instead of rollup and ES build. No matter if you use Vite and Vue like plain on or like with nuxt.js, it also works well. And even all the other frameworks out there that are Vite-based.
Yeah, and that one's a drop-in replacement, right? You don't really have to change much to get the roll-down version.
Exactly. I think like not changing much fits pretty well. You might want to change a few things here and there. So for example, if you use some advanced configuration, like Rolldown doesn't necessarily cover them all, especially if you set up chunking to say, hey, there's an option in Vite called manual chunks to define which parts of the JavaScript should go where. This is something that Rolldown supports slightly different, so you might have to adapt things to a more fine-grained and, well, I want to say better API, but just it offers more customizability. But other than that, for most of the things, it is just dropping that in and you're good to go. Exactly. And I think then for Vite 7, I mean, it's a major version. I said before, there are some breaking changes as in removing old deprecated APIs. So there was like an old SCSS or SAS API, it's gone, split vendor chunks, a lot of things that they were good to go, good to be removed for a while. And now it's time to clean things up because that's the best part of major versions. So if you use anything that was deprecated in Vite 6 already, that might be your time to switch over. And I think that kind of wraps up the big changes in Vite 7 already. Did we miss anything?
I think that's it. There's also, in the blog post, it was announced, and I think on the socials, it was announced a little bit earlier as well, that Void Zero and Nuxt Labs have teamed up so that now Anthony Fu is going to be working on some Vite Dev Tools.
Good one, yeah.
If you have been following along with Nuxt and the Nuxt Dev Tools, you'll know that he was helped out a lot with that and made them really awesome. And so looking forward to seeing what kind of dev tools we might get with Vite.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see because I feel like right now, in terms of dev tools, like every framework does a bit on their own. And you can, for example, visualize your bundle already to have like a little tree chart to say, hey, which chunk is how big. But there are a lot of things that could be improved. For example, to see what Vite plugin, for example, takes the most time and which places takes the longest in build, or maybe even like let frameworks hook into that, inject own things, analyzers, and so on. So I'm also really curious what will happen there. I'll link to a social media post where the folks at Void Zero, so I think I even said a post a couple of weeks ago, shared a little screenshot of how that might look like at some point, a little prototype. They're definitely in the work. Anthony's doing an amazing job there. And the best part, once again, it's all framework agnostic. So we can use that with Vue, with Nuxt, with everything based on Vite. So yeah, that'll be great.
Yeah, that'll be really cool. I think that'll be a big impact because dev tools like this feels like a lot of great things. And it's only recently that like Nuxt has gotten like the really good dev tools, and Vue has had good dev tools for a while, but like really leveraging the whole pipeline, like the whole stack, and seeing everything in your app from like the bottom up is really, really useful.
Yeah, then you also can exactly pinpoint not only why is your bundle maybe bigger, because that you can kind of do already, but also like, hey, why is the build taking that long? Or maybe there's an automatic warning saying, hey, this dependency is still CJS and that's not tree shakeable. You might want to search for an alternative or whatsoever. So once again, there are a lot of options for customizability, for DevTools plugins hooking into things, frameworks providing maybe their own rule set and so on. So really exciting when that will land.
Yeah, and like how Nitro has become framework agnostic and providing like so much, not just for Nuxt, but like all these other meta frameworks, and Vite was pulled out of Vue and now powering like everything. I think it would be a nice future if we have dev tooling that was like that, like a nice base platform for dev tools instead of every single framework and every single thing just kind of rolling their own thing. We could have like a base set of primitives or whatever and go from there. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's part of what the plan is for now. I think they might be trying to tackle some other stuff initially, but
I mean,
who knows?
Vite is that in a way, right? For frameworks except Next.js, Vite is this like shared infrastructure layer, and like leverage it and building it on top of that is pretty fun. And of course, Nitro could be the same thing for, let's say, meta framework / the backend. It will be also interesting to see how Nitro will integrate with Vite at some point. So we're still about to witness that in the future. And while we're talking about Vite and Nitro, there's also something coming up for later this year, but still doesn't hurt to mention it. A ViteConf that happened 2 times online already with a lot of amazing talks, links to the playlist also in the show notes. It's going live in person, flesh and blood, so to say. So if you want to learn more about Vite, want to see Avenue live, some people of the Vite core team, some Void Zero folks, then in October, it's the time to come to Amsterdam, the Netherlands. So luckily just a quick bike ride from here, maybe a bit further from your side to check that out. So we also have a link in the description. And maybe, let's see, maybe even a little discount code. There will definitely be a good chunk of amazing talks. Already had a little sneak peek at the lineup. CFP is also still open if you're interested in submitting a talk yourself. If you have like a really cool storyteller with Vite, that's your chance.
Yeah, this one looks exciting. And yeah, I'm just looking through a little bit of the schedule here. It looks like there's going to be a bunch of great talks. So
check it
go
out.
there.
Yes.
Get your ticket.
And I think that's kind of it when it comes to Vite. Vite 7, at least. We'll stay tuned for patch releases that usually follow the minor versions with some new features.
Of course.
That's the way to go. And also, as you mentioned before, the integration with the environment API on the Nuxt side. There's also, maybe that's also one more thing. It's not really related to Vite 7, but there is a Vue plugin, so the Vite plugin Vue, so to say. There's a beta release, so if you ever want to try it out, if you use plain Vue and Vite together, that might be the chance to upgrade that. If you already use Rolldown-Vite, that means even faster builds, because there are a few changes there. So yeah, worth checking. I'll also link to that, as usual, in the show notes / description.
Exciting stuff. There's lots of new features and new versions of everything, it feels like, all coming out. And it's exciting and a little bit stressful to try and keep on top of it all. But you also don't need to keep on top of it all, and just, pay attention to the things you actually care about. So
yeah, that's true. And I feel also like that's what we mentioned in the beginning, the whole stress of upgrading. Ideally, with like major versions like that, you have a little bit of less stress because it's not much to do on your side, luckily. And once again, if you don't do it today or tomorrow, nobody will kick you out of the company, I suppose. So it's also fine to let that simmer for a little bit. Of course, if you have the chance, if you want to stay up to date, that's a good chance to upgrade now. But for example, as I said before, if you're still on Node 18 or lower, that might be a more important target first, or Vue 2, or Nuxt 2, and so on and so on. Yeah, also let us know where you are, what you think about all the upgrades about Vite 7, and what's your plan with that. We would like to know.
Yeah, let us know in the comments, and also let us know if you're hoping to make it to ViteConf in October.
Exactly. Well, I know I'll be around, so at least hope to see some of you there. Michael, any plans for October already, or not sure yet?
No plans in October, but I don't think that I'll be making it out to this one, unfortunately.
Well, I heard there's also a live stream. So in case you can't make it in person, that might be an option as well.
I can make it virtually.
Exactly. So see you all either virtually or in person over at ViteConf. And of course, also you will see us in either the next DejaVue episode, if this is not the most recent one. And well, if it is, then there are a bunch of older ones as well. A few that we mentioned throughout this episode. So in sure that you can continue or just take the next one that you might have missed out. Otherwise, yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. If you listened through all of them already, then congrats. Amazing job. Let us know in the comments which year it is and which day, just in case. Because it could be that's, I don't know, in 2027, like, hey, I got into Vue. I want to hear what happened in the last, I don't know, 3 years. We go. Or if it's just like, yeah, I listen every week. So yeah, we'd be curious to hear. And see you in the next episode all.